I just want you to look at this map. This is an overlay of the African continent which could hold the whole of the United States, the whole of China, the whole of India. I was astonished you could get all those countries into Africa. So the question today is, why invest in Africa?
In the last decade, 6 out of the 10 fastest growing economies were in Africa. All of those are growing faster than 6%, some close to double-digit growth. And what's remarkable is these are not all in extractive, these are not all in any particular sector. They've got diversified economies, they're producing agricultural surpluses, they're producing mining and oil surpluses, they're producing robust domestic markets and they have a growing middle class. The coming decade is the decade when Africa emerges as the world's most attractive place for investment, for leadership, and for engagement.
What is the potential?
In 2001, Nigeria had a total, on a good day, if it wasn't raining, 400,000 lines fixed mobile, right, total. So the government went through a process of selling licenses to investors who were willing to invest in the industry. And from a start in 2002 of roughly, say 500,000 lines, we have today about 90 million mobile phone lines. And we expect that the GDP of Nigeria is actually going to be rebased to take this into account. The GDP will probably go up by 30–40%.
As much as that? 30–40%?
Yeah.
Hey, come on, that's joking.
No, not at all.
And SAB Miller, the first multinational to invest in a brewery. Production capacity, 600 employees, all South Sudanese except 3%, which are expats from other African countries. They have all imported materials, so they're supporting farmers to grow cassava, which is used for beer starch. There's a Dutch company with technology that brings the processing to the farm. You don't have to transport the cassava, so you support the farmers, the smallholder farmers. You produce something locally that's used in the beer, it's sold on the shelves, and they're making a lot of money and paying taxes to the government.
5 years ago, there was a small telecommunication company who decided to set up a fund to get some foreign investors in Kenya. And now that company is close to $1 billion USD. Africa is the best place to do business.
My major concern is protecting my investment and making sure my investment actually gets done, and that is the incidence of corruption in the continent.
When you talk to business people, they say, you know what, it takes two to have corruption. So if you come in with a zero tolerance policy and you don't offer a bribe when isn't accepted, then you can get rid of the corruption. And I would just also point out, having done a lot of business in China, that corruption is not unique to Africa.
For instance, Nigeria, which you talk about a lot, they actually rate the same as Russia. So, plenty of people invest in Russia. So if you have a tolerance, I'm using it as a comparable though. So if you have a tolerance for investing, say, in Russia, then you can use that as a comparable about what your tolerance is for some other countries, including Nigeria, around the world.
You really have to pick the sectors you're going to go after, because if you're going after the high-flying sectors where you just know there's a bunch of activity swarming around it, you're going to run into all the different red tape issues and the barriers to entry and the corruption. It's not to say you don't stay away from the high return opportunities, but you sort of have to pick and choose your battles that way and phase into your investments. So we're looking at things, for example, in healthcare. And there's some regulatory issues within healthcare in Africa, but it's not exactly going to be the same as looking at oil and gas services, looking at the power generation privatization activity in Nigeria, because it's just not as above the water, if you will, in terms of radars. So you have to really pick your sectors in terms of corruption.
The real problem in Africa is the income distribution. So the social investors and the NGOs and others know that in the long run, if you don't do something about income inequality, then the capitalist model of development and societal integration will be threatened.
When you're speaking to American, let's say, investors or corporates that want to go into Africa, and they know less about Africa, and there's that perception issue, how do you tackle that and get them along?
My most recent clients are all either African or Brazilian. So to be honest, there are some times when I just think it's a lost cause. Frankly, if you start having companies be honest about why they're missing their numbers, if you look at Nokia, you look at Ericsson, Why are you missing your numbers? Because we missed the boat and the Chinese have the entire market. There are 600 million mobile phone subscribers in Africa. Where's Emerson? They missed it.
So what do? You want to invest into Africa. You want to do business in Africa. Set up a holding company in Mauritius. Have that holding company 100% own the operating company in Nigeria, in Kenya, in whatever African country you want to be, and resolve all the dispute at the level of the holding company. So this is how Mauritius, because we've signed a series of treaties with African countries, we have investment protection agreements, but above all, we are Africa.
Well, I came to this event because it's about investing in Africa, and Africa today, Sub-Saharan Africa, is one of the fastest growing economies, and Angola is one of the fastest growing economies in Sub-Saharan Africa. So I'd like to hear what the panel has to say about the great opportunities that Africa has to offer, and also contribute to the debate.
I think the economic potential in Sub-Saharan Africa is really the natural resources. Starting with, I know I'm from Liberia, we just discovered oil. It's untapped, and now companies are going in to look and see what the potentials are. I think the natural resources is what Africa has to offer, and that could be the best economic potential in the Sub-Saharan region.
I think that over time what we're going to see is there's going to be a great need for housing as people migrate to the larger cities, and everything that goes around with housing and infrastructure and roads. And as well, you're going to need some additional health care. Those are places I would focus. I think we're going to look back in the next 30 years and Sub-Saharan Africa will be the fastest growing part of the world for the prior 30 years.